שלום לכם וברוכים הבאים לשיחה נוספת של PMI. אני אילנית פרימן, מזכ"לית העמותה. איתי נמצא היום אנדרו קיי. Hello Andre, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you very much, Eileenit. How are you?
Thank you so much for coming all the way from Australia to speak with us and share your experience with us.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Eileenit. It's an honor actually and a pleasure to have this interview with you and your PMI members in Israel.
Andrew, you are actually a system thinker. This is how you present yourself, and you have backgrounds in science, and you apply scientific thinking in human systems. You have the experience, in your background of looking at the bigger picture, looking at the regime system rather than the very, very local system. And this is how you came to do what you do today. And what you have been applying is basically the principles of TOC.
Yeah, and I was just about to go to, well, what is this thing, critical chain? Right, let's find out what makes it stand out as a methodology. And it really it stands on the shoulders of critical path. So it just extends critical path methodology. And what it really is showing is where there are some gaps. And so critical path is excellent. It was developed though over 60 years ago. And historically, and there's massive research, you can check it all out, almost 4 out of 5 projects fail to either come on time or meet budget or to meet scope. And Standish Group, Gartner Group, PDI Research, McKinsey's, Harvard Business Review, PricewaterhouseCoopers, all have done tens of thousands of research projects, researched all these projects, and they all come up roughly with this number. And the PMI have got a similarly high number. It's a bit lower. And this is not to say that the body of knowledge is not relevant. No, absolutely not. It's just that we, rather than make people work harder, work faster, because that's a typical solution, we actually challenge the methodology and say what's missing that if we had would make the difference. And so this is Dr. Eli Goldratt, the Israeli physicist who's now passed away now, just with 10 years from in June. He was the founder for all this. The reason there's this difference is because it lies in the heart of how we plan, schedule, and execute projects. And critical path does this. It protects each task. Its mantra is to protect each task in order to protect the whole project. We add safety to tasks because we know if we just give touch time, that's not going to be a very reliable outcome. You've got 50-50 chance of fail. So we've got to protect against interruptions, changes in priorities, resource unavailability, delays within the task activity. There's a lot of things. So we add padding, right? And we hope that padding is enough to cover the task, and then it will, because there's dependency and there's statistical dependencies throughout a project. So a disruption can ripple all the way through. We can't just schedule touch time. We add this safety. Now, one of the things that critical chain has looked at is that this safety is invisible. And because it's invisible, you can't manage it. And it's just human nature to do things. Like, for instance, if we've all been to school or university and you've got an assignment or an exam, when do you do your study?
You always wait for the last minute.
Wait for the last minute. And when you have enough padding in your task, you know that your touch time is going to be maybe only 50% or 60%. You look at it and then you go off and do other important things. And then you come to your task. So that student syndrome, we call it, or procrastination, is alive and kicking in project environments. On the other hand, you might even have what we call Parkinson's law, where work expands to fill the time available. Now, if you've given an estimate for a task, say 8 days, and you finish it in 4 days, you're not going to hand in your early finish because you're going to lose your credibility, one, because you didn't half the time, but then you're going to be forced to do it in the same time next time or something similar. And if it's a job that you don't really like doing, you're going to get it again for sure. So you allow the task to expand to fill the time available. So these are two undesirable behaviors. It's also partly, there is another one which it's an efficiency syndrome. To make the project come in on time, we should start every task as early as possible. Surely by doing that, we'll also reduce the duration of the project. Nope, it doesn't work that way. Because what you do when you start many tasks early, apart from committing too much capital up front, the question is it actually necessary? And what we're doing is we're bringing resources overlapping. So one resource may have to do several tasks at the same time because we started.
You're creating pressure.
It would create pressure and bad multitasking. And there's a really good article by the Harvard Business Review where bad multitasking can contribute to 60% project overrun on its own, let alone the other stuff, right? And I mentioned unreported early finish where you don't hand in. And so the net effect of just this is that losses of time accumulate and any gains that you potentially can have are lost. So inevitably your project is going to go extend and extend and it goes out the window. Okay. So this is part of the reason why there's such a high failure rate with the three-headed dragon with time, budget, and scope. So what we have this problem, and it's inflated because of the task dependency. So when you have a knock-on effect, this just multiplies. Just come back to a couple of other of the differences is that when you with critical path, one of the things is that the focus goes down to micromanaging very, very quickly. You start out with a big picture, but you end up going down because there's a couple of other things that I haven't yet mentioned that distinguishes critical chain from critical path. So critical chain actually focuses on bringing the project in on time, and it doesn't fixate itself on individual tasks. The most important thing is to bring the project in on time. So if you change your focus, then you're looking and wanting to measure something in a different way. You're not looking at the start and finish time of a task. You're only looking at the start and finish time of the project now. And you're allowing flex. We're not being deterministic. Mother Nature in herself is not deterministic. She does not say, guys, I'm going to rain right now and tomorrow it will be sunshine. Now we have weather forecasters trying to predict when all that. Mother Nature doesn't tell us. And nature has a way of disrupting anything that we try to make everything as deterministic as possible. We want certainty, but why fight that? Why not just live with that? So what critical chain does, it takes all that safety that we had before and uses it and creates a buffer. So you can visualize now a long critical path, but with all that safety that was in those tasks now as safety at the end. And it's a traffic light system. So it's divided into 3 zones, and it's only 50% of all that safety that was packaged away in all those individual tasks beforehand, because we don't need all that safety. As a rule of thumb, there are statistics, sum of squares, I can't remember everything now, but you only need to use 50%. It's quite adequate and it works. So, but one other thing that's really, really important I have to mention is that a major difference is that in the planning phase with critical chain, we work with the goal at the end and work back to the beginning. And we use a form of logic. It's called a necessity logic. And that means you have everything that's relevant in order to achieve the goal. And you don't have gaps, you don't have over-sufficiency. And in the process, we also recognize another dependency, which is not built into critical path, and that is resource dependency. So in the planning, whilst you have task dependency, when you know where the tasks are and the resources are going to be allocated, you actually level that out before you start the project. Okay, I know we have float and we do this allocation in critical path, but this is a different way of building it. And so avoiding that resource contention allows us to then build a more robust project. It's less vulnerable to disruptions and knock-on effects. So if we've got early starts, if we've got all these bad behaviors, and then we're causing resources to be on top, have to be in several places at the same time, that's all gone. What critical chain does, it removes most of the project risk by the very methodology itself. So there's no space for bad, all these bad behaviors. There's no, when we have a date for a feeding chain, a chain of tasks that would feed into the longest path, that first task, its date is not a start, it's a start as late as possible date. It's not a start as early as possible date, because by pulling that forward, you may then be interfering with another resource that is supposed to be somewhere else. So hope that's fine in my description, a little bit of the elements there. Some of the advantages, you might be interested in this. I know it's high level, but when you have highly visible buffers and you're measuring the progress through your critical path, and you've got a buffer on the end of it, which makes it the critical chain, allowing for resource contention, any delay here will show up in the buffer over here. And it's an early warning system. And the rate of, I call it the burn rate. So if you are burning your buffer faster than you're burning through your tasks, you need to step in. And you can do this before it does damage to the project. You can react. So that high level of visibility is available to everyone in the project, all the stakeholders, internal and external. And
you need to use certain technology to show that.
Well, you can, in fact, there is some excellent software to do that, but you can actually do, if it's not too complex, you can do that manually. And that's actually my preferred approach to start with. So, with implementing critical chain, you don't necessarily have to have software. You can do that in a very simple visual way. As long as you've got some large space somewhere, a whiteboard and some string and some other things, you can do that. And that's my preferred approach, because it's better to understand the principles before you go out and spend some money on some new software. And I would not recommend trying to convert current software to do critical chain. There are algorithms in there. No one's going to tell you how to fix those and to make it work in your own. But there's 12 or 14 now offerings out in the marketplace, and I'm familiar with 2 or 3, and they are the top of the market. A couple of things. So you have that advantage, being able to see ahead of time the progress, and you can intervene very, very quickly. You don't have to play within the noise. You can stand and watch, and most of the time these things self-correct. With critical path, any disruption, you have to replan. With critical chain, nope, you just stay on your flight path. It will self-correct. I'll take the analogy of an airplane. You know, you're going from London to Tel Aviv, okay? You don't want to end up in Istanbul, right? So you have to go there. So you make sure that you stay on your path and you're not replanning. One important thing there, so we get rid of those unhelpful behaviors, but we have to insert a couple of others. So one of them is called the relay runner. So if you've got work, you focus on that. And if you're on the critical chain, this is the longest path through the project. Any disruption to any resource that's on task is going to check the result. So they are protected. Okay, so don't go anywhere near these guys, right? They have a special, you might have, if they're working on the desk, they might have a special baton there, bright orange, with a laser gun. If anyone comes close, they get zapped. Okay, they need to be protected. And what they do is each day, or depending on the duration of the project, they report something very different to what we traditionally do in critical path. In critical path, we report % complete. So you could be 90% complete on a task, but you may still have 50% of duration remaining. It could be the hardest part, where you have all these integrations to come to make the final steps. All these other things have to come together. With TOC, with this critical chain, we report estimated duration remaining. And that can fluctuate. So today I might think it's 3 days away, and then tomorrow, oh, I'm going to finish. So, you know, that problem didn't occur. So fine, your buffer, you've recovered some of your buffer. So this is really what's important. You're using your subject matter experts that are at the coalface, telling you how much time they think is still required to finish the job that they've been tasked with. That's all that we're asking.
You are going to give a lecture in our upcoming events in the summer in July.
Correct. Yes, that's correct.
You will give a lecture on the 20th of July, sometime in the morning. I better write that down. Yeah. You have it written down already, Andrew. And you're going to tell us a little bit more. And we'll be more than happy to host you and hear more about it, because obviously, as you have described very nicely in this project, and as you said in so many others, it makes a real difference to the project and to the career of the people who apply the principles.
So anyway, thank you, Ilana, for inviting me. I much appreciate that. And thank you for everyone listening in from Israel.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I appreciate your time. ואתם שצפיתם בנו, אני מקווה שהפקתם תועלת רבה, ואנחנו נתראה בשיחה הבאה. להתראות.